In the glittering world of New York's elite, where fortunes are vast and secrets are even bigger, a single piece of jewelry can become a weapon. This is the story of Serafina Sterling, a woman who had it all, a billionaire husband, a life of unimaginable luxury, and a place at the pinnacle of society. But her perfect world was built on a foundation of lies. The truth came to light not in a secret whisper, but in a public spectacle under the blinding lights of a charity gala. A younger woman, a mistress, flaunted a diamond ring, a ring that wasn't just a gift, but a declaration of war. What followed was not just a divorce, but an all-out battle for justice, revenge, and the soul of a woman who refused to be broken. The air in the grand ballroom of the Pierre Hotel was thick with the scent of money. It wasn't the crass smell of new bills, but the subtle, layered fragrance of generational wealth custom perfumes and the delicate aroma of thousands of imported white orchids. For Serafina Sterling, this atmosphere was as familiar as the air in her own sprawling Fifth Avenue penthouse. Tonight was the annual Starlight Foundation Gala, the crown jewel of the city's philanthropic calendar, an event she had chaired for the past 5 years. She stood near the grand staircase, a vision, in a midnight blue Schiaparelli gown that seemed to drink the light. On her wrist, the sterling star, a 40-carat sapphire bracelet her husband had given her for their 10th anniversary, shimmered with a cool, distant fire. She was the perfect hostess. Her smile practiced her movements a study in effortless grace. To the casual observer, she was the epitome of a woman who wanted for nothing. Her husband, Damien Sterling, was across the room holding court. He was a titan of industry, a man who had carved a formidable empire in private equity. With his tailored Tom Ford tuxedo, sharp jawline, and a predatory charm that could disarm world leaders and enthrall investors, he was the sun around which this entire universe orbited. Serafina watched him, a familiar faint ache settling in her chest. Lately, his smiles didn't quite reach his eyes when they landed on her. His touch, once possessive and warm, had become perfunctory, a public performance. "You look breathtaking as always," a voice purred beside her. It was Olivia Reed, her oldest and dearest friend, a woman whose sharp wit was matched only by her loyalty. "Thank you, Liv," Serafina murmured, her smile becoming genuine for the first time that evening. "You know the drill. Smile, greet, and try not to let your feet go numb before the auction." Olivia's eyes flickered towards Damien. "He's certainly in his element. I haven't seen him work a room that hard since the IPO." There was an edge to Olivia's tone that Serafina chose to ignore. Olivia had never been fully convinced by Damien's charm, seeing a ruthlessness in him that Serafina had long excused as ambition. "He's just networking, Liv. It's what he does." "Is it?" Olivia's gaze was fixed on a point behind Damien, because his most intense networking seems to be focused on that particular asset. Serafina followed her friend's gaze. Standing in the orbit of her husband's charisma was a young woman she didn't recognize. She was stunning in a way that was almost aggressive. A fire engine red dress that clung to every curve, lips plumped to a perfect pout, and raven hair so sleek it looked like liquid night. She couldn't have been older than 25. She was laughing at something Damien said, her head tilted back, her hand resting for a fraction too long on his forearm. A cold knot formed in Serafina's stomach. It was a familiar, unwelcome sensation she had been pushing down for months. The late nights Damien explained away as international calls, the scent of a different perfume on his shirts. The second phone, he claimed, was just for work. She had chosen to believe him, to believe in the life they had built. Seeing this woman, however, made denial feel like a flimsy shield against a battering ram. "Who is that?" Serafina asked, her voice dangerously calm. Olivia squeezed her arm gently. "Her name is Katerina Petrov, a model and influencer, whatever they call it these days. She's been on the scene for about 6 months, showing up at all the right parties, usually on the arm of some visiting oligarch or tech bro. Tonight, however, she seemed to have arrived alone, yet had found the most powerful man in the room to attach herself to." As Serafina watched, Damien laughed, his entire posture different from when he was with her. He was looser, more animated, a younger version of himself. The sight was a physical blow. The evening wore on a blur of air kisses and polite inquiries about their summer plans in the Hamptons. Serafina moved through it all on autopilot, the image of Damien and Katerina seared into her mind. She saw them from across the room, their heads close together. She saw Katerina's hand now resting on the small of his back. Every gesture was a tiny, sharp cut. The main event was the live auction. Damien, as was tradition, made a show of bidding on the grand prize a week on a private island in the Maldives. He won it, of course, to a round of enthusiastic applause. He stood, took the microphone to say a few words, and thanked his beautiful, incredible wife Serafina for her tireless work. The hypocrisy was so profound, so audacious, that Serafina felt a wave of nausea. She forced a smile as the spotlight found her, the applause washing over her like a tide of lies. After the auction, the atmosphere loosened. Guests mingled, champagne flowed freely, and the string quartet was replaced by a jazz ensemble. Serafina was trying to make a graceful exit when she found her path blocked. It was Katerina Petrov. Up close, she was even more striking, her youth a stark contrast to Serafina's polished elegance. Her eyes, a startling shade of green, scanned Serafina from head to toe in a way that was both dismissive and challenging. "Mrs. Sterling?" Katerina said, her voice a low, husky purr. "Such a wonderful evening. You must be so proud." "I'm proud of the work the foundation does, yes," Serafina replied, her tone icy. "Of course." Katerina smiled, a slow, deliberate curving of her lips. She then did something extraordinary. She sighed, a theatrical little sound of contentment, and raised her left hand to brush a stray piece of hair from her face. It was an entirely manufactured gesture, designed for one purpose only, to showcase the ring on her fourth finger. It wasn't just a ring. It was a supernova, a colossal cushion-cut canary diamond, at least 15 carats, flanked by 2 trapezoid-cut white diamonds. It was audacious, ostentatious, and unbelievably expensive. It was the kind of ring a man buys when he is utterly besotted or utterly careless with his money. Serafina's blood ran cold. She recognized the design. It was from the private collection of Jean-Luc Beaumont, the exclusive Parisian jeweler Damien favored. He had shown her the catalogue months ago, pointing out that very stone, musing about its fiery, untamed spirit. She had assumed it was idle talk. Katerina saw Serafina's eyes lock onto the ring. This was her moment. "Isn't it just exquisite?" she breathed, wiggling her finger so the facets caught the light, sending a shower of golden sparks across the room. A gift from a man who truly knows how to appreciate passion. "He says it reminds him of my fire." The words hung in the air, a direct echo of what Damien had said to Serafina about the stone. The insult was so precise, so calculated, it was masterful in its cruelty. This wasn't just an affair. This was a campaign of humiliation. Katerina wasn't just a mistress. She was a usurper, staking her claim in the most public way possible. For a long moment, Serafina couldn't breathe. The ambient noise of the gala, the music, the laughter, the clinking of glasses, faded into a dull roar. All she could see was that brilliant, vulgar yellow diamond on that young, manicured hand. It was a symbol of everything she had lost, everything that had been stolen from her under the guise of a perfect marriage. The sapphire on her own wrist suddenly felt cold and heavy, a relic from a forgotten dynasty. Katerina's smile widened, her green eyes flashing with triumph. She had landed her blow. Something inside Serafina, something that had been dormant for years, finally snapped. The polite, placid facade she had maintained for a decade cracked, and from the fissure emerged a white-hot rage. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She met Katerina's gaze, and for the first time, the younger woman saw something in Serafina's eyes that made her triumphant smile falter. It was not the look of a defeated woman, but the look of a queen whose kingdom had just been invaded and who was now preparing for war. Without another word, Serafina turned on her heel and walked away, her back ramrod straight. She didn't look for her husband. She didn't say goodbye to anyone. She glided through the crowd, a ghost of fury in Schiaparelli blue, leaving the noise and the lies behind her. Her destination was not her empty penthouse. Her destination was a new life, and the first step was to find the most ruthless divorce attorney in New York City. The Sterling Empire was about to be shaken to its very foundations. The ride home, in the back of the chauffeured Bentley, was a study in suffocating silence. The city lights blurred past the tinted windows, a kaleidoscope of a world that no longer felt real to Serafina. Damien had eventually caught up with her at the coat check, his face a mask of strained confusion. "Sarah, what's wrong? You disappeared. Are you feeling unwell?" he had asked, his voice laced with the faux concern he used so effectively in boardrooms. She hadn't answered him then, and she didn't answer him now. She sat on her side of the plush leather seat, her body rigid, her gaze fixed on the passing scenery. The canary diamond burned behind her eyelids, a phantom image of betrayal. He tried again, his voice lower, more intimate. "Was it something I did the auction? I thought you'd be pleased." The audacity of it was breathtaking. He could stand there dripping charm on his young mistress and then feign ignorance with such conviction. Serafina turned her head slowly to look at him. The dim interior lights of the car cast shadows across his handsome face, making him look like a stranger. "The auction was lovely, Damien," she said, her voice flat and devoid of emotion. "A masterclass in public relations." He seemed to take this as a compliment, a small, self-satisfied smile touching his lips. "Well, it's all about keeping up appearances, isn't it?" The car pulled into the private heated garage of their building. The silence stretched as they rode the private elevator up to the penthouse. The moment the elevator doors opened directly into their grand foyer, Serafina felt the gilded cage close around her. The soaring ceilings, the museum-quality art on the walls, the panoramic views of Central Park, it all felt like a movie set for a life that was a lie. She walked straight to the bar, a magnificent slab of black marble, and poured herself a glass of water, her hand trembling slightly. Damien loosened his bow tie, tossing his tuxedo jacket onto a custom-made armchair. The casual act of disrespect for their meticulously curated home struck Serafina as deeply symbolic. "All right, out with it," he said, his patience finally wearing thin. "What's this mood about? You were fine all week." Serafina took a slow sip of water, composing herself. The rage from the gala had cooled into something harder, more focused. It was a crystalline resolve. "Her name is Katerina Petrov," she said, not looking at him instead, staring at the reflection of the city lights in her glass. There was a beat of silence. It was almost imperceptible, but Serafina, who had spent 15 years studying this man, heard it. The slight hitch in his breath, the subtle shift in his posture. It was the sound of guilt. "I don't know who you're talking about," he said, his voice a little too forceful. "Don't you?" Serafina finally turned to face him, her eyes locking onto his. "The girl in the red dress. The one you couldn't take your eyes off all night. The one whose hand you couldn't keep from touching. The one wearing a 15-carat canary diamond from Jean-Luc Beaumont's private collection." She let each word land like a precision strike. She saw the flicker of panic in his eyes before the mask of indignation slammed back into place. "Oh, for God's sake, Serafina," he scoffed, walking towards the bar to pour himself a scotch. "Are you really this insecure? I was networking. Her father is a potential investor. I have to be charming to everyone. You know that." "Her father?" Serafina let out a short, bitter laugh. "I had Olivia do a little digging on the ride home. Katerina Petrovna's father is a retired plumber from Queens. Unless he's saved up a truly astonishing amount of pension money, I doubt he's the investor you're courting." Damien froze the decanter halfway to his glass. He had underestimated her. He had always underestimated her, assuming her grace and quietude were signs of weakness, of blissful ignorance. He put the decanter down with a thud. The charm vanished, replaced by a cold, cutting anger. "You had your friend investigate a guest at our own event. What is wrong with you? You're being hysterical." Hysterical. The word was a lit match to a fuse. Hysterical is not the word I would use, Damien. The word I would use is enlightened. "Tell me, does she like the ring? Did you tell her it reminded you of her fiery, untamed spirit?" The direct quote hit him like a physical slap. His face went pale. He had no defense left, no plausible deniability. He was caught. His demeanor shifted again, this time into a weary, dismissive arrogance. It was, she realized, his most honest self. "All right," he sighed, finally pouring his drink. "So what if I'm seeing her? Let's not be children about this, Serafina. We live in the real world. These things happen. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything," she whispered, the sheer audacity of the statement sucking the air from her lungs. "You bought your mistress a multi-million-dollar diamond, a stone you discussed with me, and had her flaunt it in my face at a charity event I was hosting. And that means nothing." "I didn't tell her to do that," he said, dismissively swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "She's young. She's impulsive. It was a mistake, a regrettable lapse in judgment on her part." He was throwing Katerina under the bus to save himself, but he still wasn't apologizing. He wasn't even truly admitting his own fault. He was framing it as an inconvenience, a social faux pas. "This is not about her judgment, Damien. This is about yours. This is about 15 years of marriage. This is about the vows we took." Her voice began to tremble, not with weakness, but with the sheer weight of her fury. "Oh, don't be so naive," he sneered. "Our marriage is a partnership, an arrangement. It works. It benefits both of us. You have a life anyone would kill for. A little indiscretion on my part doesn't have to change any of that. You just have to be smart about it." That was it. That was the moment, her heart, already fractured, shattered into dust. It wasn't just the affair. It was his complete and utter contempt for her, for their life together. To him, she was a part of the portfolio, the wife asset who was supposed to perform her duties and look the other way. The life she had cherished was to him a transaction. She looked around the vast, silent room. The art, the furniture, the view, it wasn't a home. It was a mausoleum for a marriage that had died long ago. She had just been too blind to see it. "Get out," she said, her voice quiet, but carrying the unshakable weight of finality. He actually laughed. "Excuse me, this is my home, Serafina. You don't order me out of my own home. I am not going to spend another night under the same roof as you," she stated, her gaze unwavering. "So either you leave, or I will. And if I leave tonight, Damien, I promise you, I will never, ever come back." He studied her face, searching for the familiar softness, the willingness to concede that he had always relied upon. He didn't find it. He found a stranger, a woman carved from ice and fire. He saw that she meant it. His face hardened into a cruel sneer. "Fine, have your little tantrum, but you'll come to your senses. Think about what you'd be throwing away. Think about our prenup. You walk away from this marriage, you walk away with practically nothing. You'll be a nobody." He grabbed his jacket and strode towards the elevator. "Call me when you've decided to stop being a fool." The elevator doors slid shut, and he was gone. Serafina stood alone in the cavernous silence of the penthouse. The threat about the prenup designed to crush her had the opposite effect. It clarified everything. He thought he could control her with money, that her identity was tied completely to his wealth. He thought she was nothing without him. A slow, determined smile touched her lips. It was a feral, unfamiliar expression on her own face. "We'll see about that," she whispered. To the empty room. She walked to her study, a beautiful room, lined with first editions and antique maps. She ignored the shelves and sat at her delicate Louis XVI desk. She pulled out her laptop, the screen illuminating her face in the dark. Her fingers, no longer trembling, flew across the keyboard. She didn't search for therapists or self-help articles. Her search query was simple. Best divorce attorney, NYC, Shark, no mercy, the first name that appeared again and again in legal journals and society gossip columns was Genevieve Dubois. The Velvet Hammer, they called her, a woman known for dismantling the empires of arrogant men. Serafina picked up her phone. She didn't call her mother or a society friend who would offer platitudes. She called the one person she knew would understand the need for battle. "Liv," she said when her friend answered, her voice clear and strong. "I need a favor. I need you to be with me tomorrow morning. I have an appointment." "Sarah, are you okay? Where are you going?" Olivia's voice was filled with concern. Serafina looked at the name on her screen. "I'm going to war." The offices of Dubois and Associates were located in the Seagram building, a bastion of modernist power on Park Avenue. There were no plush carpets or gentle pastels here. The aesthetic was one of lethal minimalism, polished concrete floors, steel-framed glass walls, and stark, powerful contemporary art. It was a space designed to intimidate, to communicate that this was a place where sentimentality died and battles were won. Serafina, dressed in a sharp, tailored grey pantsuit, felt a strange sense of calm as she and Olivia were escorted into Genevieve Dubois' corner office. The office offered a commanding view of the city, the view of a predator from its perch. Genevieve Dubois rose from behind a massive black granite desk. She was a woman in her late 50s, with a severe, chic black bob, piercing blue eyes, and an aura of such intense competence that it was almost a physical force. She wore a Chanel suit with the ease of a general wearing her uniform. "Mrs. Sterling," she said, her voice smooth, but with an undercurrent of steel. "Thank you for coming in. This is your friend, Ms. Reed." "Yes, Olivia is my closest confidant. I'd like her to stay." Serafina said, her tone leaving no room for argument. Of course, Genevieve nodded, gesturing to the two Mies van der Rohe chairs opposite her desk. Discretion is paramount. Please tell me everything. Start from the beginning and spare me no detail. The devil, Mrs. Sterling, is always in the details. For the next hour, Serafina recounted the story. She spoke with a calm, chilling precision that surprised even herself. She detailed the growing distance in her marriage, Damien's second phone, the late nights. She described the gala in vivid detail, from Katerina's dress to the exact words she had used when showing off the ring. She finished with Damien's contemptuous dismissal of their marriage and his final parting threat about the prenuptial agreement. Throughout her recitation, Genevieve Dubois was perfectly still. She didn't take notes. She simply watched Serafina, her gaze analytical, absorbing every fact, every nuance. When Serafina finished, the silence in the room was absolute. Finally, Genevieve leaned forward, her hands clasped on the desk. He called you a fool and threatened you with the prenup. Good. Arrogance is the single most useful weakness an opponent can have. It makes them sloppy. The prenup is ironclad. Serafina said the words, tasting like ash. Damien had his top corporate lawyers draft it. I had my family lawyer at the time, a sweet old man who was more accustomed to writing wills, look it over. I was in love. I barely read it. A common story, Genevieve said, without a hint of judgment. Let me see it. Serafina slid a folder across the desk. Genevieve opened it, and her eyes, sharp as a hawk's, scanned the dense legal text. She was a speed reader, her gaze flying down each page. For 10 minutes, the only sound was the soft rustle of paper. Standard, but vicious, Genevieve declared, closing the folder. It stipulates a one-time lump sum payment of $5 million for every 5 years of marriage, a total of $15 million. You also get to keep the Fifth Avenue penthouse as it was purchased in your name and your personal jewelry. Olivia scoffed. $15 million is pocket change for Damien. He makes that much in a bad hour. Precisely, Genevieve agreed. It's an insulting figure, designed to ensure you could maintain a comfortable life, but never a life that could rival his or cause him any trouble. It keeps you out of his social and economic stratosphere. It's a leash. So he was right, Serafina said, her heart sinking. I walk away with crumbs. Let's not be hasty, Mrs. Sterling, Genevieve said, a glint in her eye. A prenup is a contract, and like any contract, it is subject to interpretation and, more importantly, to leverage. The affair itself, I'm afraid, means little. New York is a no-fault state. His infidelity is morally reprehensible, but legally it's not a silver bullet. She paused, letting the weight of that sink in. However, there are always avenues. Paragraph 12, Section B, the lifestyle clause. It guarantees you a lifestyle commensurate with the lifestyle enjoyed during the marriage. $15 million does not buy a lifestyle that includes a private jet, a staff of 12, and a 7-figure annual charity budget. We can argue this, but it will be a long, ugly fight. Genevieve leaned back. But I don't like long, ugly fights unless I know I will win unequivocally. We need something more. We need leverage that makes the prenup irrelevant. We need something he is more afraid of than losing a fraction of his fortune. What could he possibly be more afraid of? Serafina asked. Jail, Genevieve said simply, or the complete implosion of his company. Men like Damien Sterling build their empires on two things: capital and reputation. If we can threaten either of those in a truly meaningful way, he will pay any price to make us go away. He will beg you to take a settlement so large it would make the prenup look like a rounding error. The audacity of the strategy was terrifying and exhilarating. Serafina looked at Olivia, who gave her a small, determined nod. Damien's business is his life, Serafina said, her mind already racing. He guards it obsessively. And you, Mrs. Sterling, have had a 15-year front-row seat, Genevieve countered. You've been in the house. You've overheard calls. You've seen documents left on his desk. Think, is there anything, any oddities, any shell corporations mentioned in passing, any trips to countries with flexible banking laws? Cayman Islands, Switzerland, Panama. Serafina's mind flashed back. There were countless fragments. Damien hunched over his laptop late at night, cursing at spreadsheets. Vague mentions of special-purpose vehicles and offshore holding companies. A trip to Zurich 2 years ago that he claimed was for a ski vacation, but he'd gone alone and returned tense and irritable. There might be things, Serafina said slowly. I never paid close attention. I thought it was just business. It's always just business, Genevieve said. Now I want you to go home, to your penthouse. He may have told you to leave, but that address is your legal residence. Do not abandon it. It is now our base of operations. He won't expect you to fight back from the heart of his territory. Genevieve stood up, signaling the end of the meeting. Your husband made a critical error. He showed his hand at the gala, and then he confessed his contempt for you in the privacy of your home. He thinks the game is over. For us, it is just beginning. Go home, Mrs. Sterling. Look around. Open your eyes. You are no longer a wife. You are a forensic investigator. Find me a loose thread. Find me one single thing that feels wrong, and I will unravel his entire world. Leaving the office and stepping back out onto Park Avenue, Serafina felt different. The fear and humiliation had been transmuted into something else purpose. Genevieve Dubois hadn't just offered legal advice, she had given her a battle plan. Damien had threatened her with becoming a nobody. He had no idea what a nobody with nothing left to lose was capable of. She was going back to the penthouse not as a spurned wife, but as a spy in her own home. Returning to the penthouse felt like breaking into her own life. The vast, sun-drenched space, once a symbol of her success as a society wife, now felt like a crime scene. Every object, every piece of art, every framed photograph was tainted. Damien had not returned, and the staff, under strict instructions from the head housekeeper, who was loyal to Serafina, operated with quiet, respectful discretion, sensing the seismic shift in the household. For the first 2 days, Serafina did nothing but observe, trying to see her home through Genevieve's eyes. She walked through the rooms, running her hands over familiar surfaces, but looking for the unfamiliar. The target was Damien's private study. It was his sanctuary, a sleek modern room, paneled in dark mahogany, with a formidable steel desk and a biometric lock on the door that only responded to his thumbprint. It was the one room in the house that was exclusively his, a place she had rarely entered. He thinks you're probably at your mother's in Connecticut, crying into your Chardonnay, Olivia said, during one of their hourly check-in calls. The last thing he expects is for you to be plotting a coup d'etat from his favorite chair. The lock was the first obstacle. A professional locksmith was too risky. It would leave a digital trail. The solution, it turned out, was embarrassingly simple and deeply personal. Serafina remembered one night years ago, after Damien had too much wine at dinner, he'd bragged about the security system. It's foolproof, he'd slurred, but even I need a backup. He'd programmed a master override code a sequence of numbers only he knew. A sequence of numbers she had overheard him dictating to his security chief over the phone. Their anniversary followed by the stock ticker symbol of his first major acquisition, 0815 TRL. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she keyed in the sequence on the small panel beside the door. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a soft electronic click, the lock disengaged. She pushed the heavy door open and stepped inside. The room smelled of leather scotch and secrets. It was obsessively neat. The desk was clear, except for a sleek laptop and a stack of files. This was her chance. With Olivia on FaceTime, acting as a second pair of eyes and a moral compass, Serafina began her search. "Start with the obvious," Olivia's voice crackled from the phone propped against a lamp. "Paper files. Look for anything that doesn't say Sterling Industries." She sifted through the files. Most were standard corporate reports, market analyses, things she didn't understand. But then she found a thin manila folder tucked at the very bottom. It had a single cryptic label, Project Canary. Her blood went cold. Canary, the color of the diamond on Katerina's hand. Coincidence? Genevieve's voice echoed in her head. The devil is in the details. She opened the folder. Inside were not corporate documents, but property deeds and bank statements. There was a deed for a luxury condo at 15 Central Park West, purchased 3 months ago. The buyer was not Damian Sterling. It was a shell corporation she'd never heard of, Petrov Holdings LLC. The purchase price was $12 million. There were also bank statements for an account linked to the LLC showing a regular monthly deposit of $100,000. The account holder authorized for withdrawals was listed as Katerina Petrov. "Oh my God," Serafina whispered, sinking into Damian's leather chair. He didn't just buy her a ring, he bought her a life. He set her up in an apartment overlooking the park you walk in every day. Olivia said, her voice filled with disgust. "The nerve of that man is just astronomical." This was devastating, but it was still just proof of the affair, proof of his spending. It wasn't the silver bullet Genevieve wanted. It was damning, but it wasn't criminal. The real prize had to be in the laptop. It was, of course, password protected. Serafina tried the obvious: their anniversary, his birthday, the names of his yachts. Nothing. She spent an hour trying every combination she could think of, her frustration mounting. "Think, Sarah," Olivia prompted. "What does he truly love? What does he worship more than anything?" The answer was immediate and ugly. Himself. She looked at the desk. Next to the laptop was a small, framed photo. It wasn't of her or them. It was a photo of Damian ringing the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange on the day of his company's IPO, a look of pure, unadulterated triumph on his face. She remembered the date, October 27, 2015. She typed in the password, Triumph 2715. The screen unlocked. She felt a dizzying rush of adrenaline. She was in. The desktop was clean with only a few icons. One was a standard accounting software program. Another was a link to his corporate server. But there was a third, an encrypted folder icon simply labeled Contingencies. This had to be it. She clicked on it, and a second password prompt appeared. This one would be harder. It wouldn't be something sentimental. It would be something only he, in his arrogance, would deem clever. She stared at the screen, her mind racing. What was his ultimate contingency? His ultimate safety net? Her eyes fell again on the Project Canary folder. Petrov Holdings, LLC. Where did the money come from to fund it? Not from his personal accounts. She still had access to those, and there were no $12 million withdrawals. It had to have come from the company. But how? Liv, what if the affair isn't the secret he's protecting? Serafina mused aloud. What if the affair is the cover for the real secret? She navigated to the standard accounting software and began looking through company expenditures. It was a labyrinth of numbers, but one line item caught her eye under consulting and professional services. A monthly payment of $500,000 was being made to a firm she'd never heard of, Apex Global Strategies. The payments had started about 2 years ago. Who is Apex Global Strategies? She asked, typing the name into a search engine. The results were sparse. A bare-bones website with a post office box in the Cayman Islands as its address. It was a ghost. A classic shell corporation used for laundering money. She had a sudden, terrifying thought. She went back to the Project Canary folder and looked at the bank statements for Petrov Holdings, LLC. The monthly $100,000 deposits weren't coming from Damian Sterling. They were wire transfers from Apex Global Strategies. It all clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Damian was siphoning money from his own public company, Sterling Industries, funneling it into a Cayman Islands shell corp, and then using that laundered money to fund his affair with Katerina. He wasn't just an adulterer, he was an embezzler. He was committing corporate fraud on a massive scale. The affair wasn't just a personal failing, it was the motive and the direct beneficiary of a federal crime. "I've got it, Liv," she said, her voice shaking with a mixture of horror and triumph. "I've got it all." Now for the final password. The contingencies folder. What would he name his escape hatch, his ultimate protection? He was a man obsessed with legacy and power, a man who saw himself as a king. In mythology, what protects a king's treasure? A dragon, a serpent, a name from legend. She typed in a single word, Ouroboros, the ancient symbol of a serpent, eating its own tail, representing self-sufficiency and eternal return. It was exactly the kind of pretentious, self-important reference Damian would love. The folder opened. It was a treasure trove of criminality. Detailed ledgers tracking the flow of money from Sterling Industries to Apex, encrypted communications with the offshore bankers who managed the account. A list of other projects funded the same way, bribes to foreign officials, illegal political donations, personal luxuries, all paid for with stolen shareholder money. And there, in a subfolder, was the worst of it. A detailed plan, code-named Phoenix, outlining how, in the event of a corporate collapse or investigation, he could divert a final massive tranche of funds to an untraceable account and disappear, leaving his company and its investors in ruins. He had a forged passport under a different name, Marcus Thorne, and a detailed escape route through a non-extradition country. Serafina felt sick. This man she had loved, this man she had built a life with, was a common thief hiding in a billionaire's suit. He was willing to destroy everything and everyone to save himself. She methodically began copying every file, every ledger, every email onto a military-grade encrypted flash drive Genevieve had given her. It took hours. As the sun began to rise, casting long shadows across the city, she finally finished. She logged out, cleared the computer's history, and placed the laptop back exactly where she'd found it. She put the Project Canary folder back at the bottom of the stack. She walked out of the study and engaged the lock. No one would ever know she had been there. She walked out onto the terrace overlooking Central Park. The city was waking up, full of people heading to work, people who invested their pensions in companies like Sterling Industries, trusting that the men at the top were honorable. Damien had called her a fool. He had threatened her with poverty. He held what he thought was the ultimate power over her. But as she stood there, the cool morning air on her face, the small, heavy flash drive in her pocket, she knew that she now held the ultimate power over him. She held his entire world in the palm of her hand, and she was about to close her fist. 3 days later, the meeting was set. Not in a lawyer's office, but on Serafina's turf, the grand library of the Fifth Avenue penthouse. It was a room of quiet, old-world power, lined with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a place where Damien often entertained his most important business partners. Serafina chose it deliberately. She wanted to dismantle him in the very heart of his empire. Damien arrived precisely on time, dressed in a pristine business suit, his face a mask of bored annoyance. He clearly believed this was a meeting about the terms of his generous prenup, a final plea from his hysterical wife. He walked in, expecting to dictate terms. His composure faltered slightly when he saw not just Serafina, but Genevieve Dubois, sitting calmly in one of the leather armchairs by the unlit fireplace. Genevieve Dubois, he said, the name tasting like poison. I should have known she'd find the most expensive ambulance chaser in the city. Mr. Sterling, Genevieve replied, her voice as cool and smooth as the marble floor. Please have a seat. We have a great deal to discuss. Serafina remained standing by the window, looking out at the park. She didn't turn to face him. The power play was intentional, and she could feel his irritation growing. I don't have a great deal of time, Damien snapped, remaining on his feet. I've reviewed the prenuptial agreement with my lawyers. It's airtight. Let's just have your client sign the papers, take her settlement, and we can all move on with our lives. Ah, the prenup, Genevieve said, with a small knowing smile. We're not here to discuss the prenup. That got his attention. He finally looked from Genevieve to Serafina's back. What is this then? Some ploy to cry about my emotional distress and try to get a few extra million? It won't work. Serafina finally turned around. The fearful, heartbroken woman he had last seen was gone. In her place stood a woman he didn't recognize. Her eyes were clear and cold, and she held a small black object in her hand, a flash drive. We're here to discuss a few projects of yours, Damien. Serafina said, her voice steady. Let's start with Project Canary. The color drained from Damien's face. It was the first, undeniable sign of panic. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Serafina took a step forward. A $12 million condo for a Miss Katerina Petrov. A monthly stipend of $100,000. All funded through a charming little shell company called Petrov Holdings, LLC. Damien's lawyer, a slick corporate shark named Harrison Cole, who had just arrived and was standing by the door, stepped forward. My client's personal arrangements are not relevant to this discussion. Oh, but they are, Mr. Cole, Genevieve interjected smoothly, because the funding for this personal arrangement is deeply relevant. Which brings us to our next topic, Apex Global Strategies. If Canary had made Damien pale, Apex made him look like he'd seen a ghost. His facade of arrogance crumbled, replaced by pure, naked fear. He shot a venomous look at Serafina. You went through my things. I went through our things in our home, Serafina corrected him calmly, and I found some very interesting reading material. I learned all about how Sterling Industries has been paying $500,000 a month in consulting fees to a post office box in the Cayman Islands. A P.O. box that then conveniently wires money to your mistress's holding company. She tossed the flash drive onto the polished mahogany table between them. It landed with a soft, yet deafeningly loud clack. That drive, Serafina continued, her voice dropping to a near whisper, contains every ledger, every wire transfer, every encrypted email between you and your offshore bankers. It contains detailed evidence of embezzlement, wire fraud, and money laundering. It shows you stealing from your own shareholders to fund your tawdry affairs and your extravagant lifestyle. Damien stared at the flash drive as if it were a venomous snake. He was speechless. Harrison Cole looked shaken, clearly blindsided by this turn of events. He had prepared for a divorce negotiation, not a federal indictment. And then, Serafina said, walking closer until she was standing directly in front of her husband, forcing him to meet her gaze. There's the Phoenix Project, your little escape plan, the forged passport under the name Marcus Thorne. The plan to drain the company and flee, leaving everyone else to face the consequences. Tell me, Damien, what do you think the SEC would do with this information, or the U.S. Attorney's Office? Damien finally broke. What do you want? He rasped, his voice hoarse. This was the moment. The culmination of all the pain, the lies, the humiliation. Serafina felt a grim satisfaction, but also a profound sadness for the man he had become, for the life they had thrown away. The prenup, Genevieve said, taking charge once more, her voice sharp as a scalpel, is now void. It was signed under fraudulent pretenses, as you were already, it seems, engaged in the criminal activity that funded the lifestyle you were promising. We will not be using it as a starting point. She slid a new folder across the table. Here are our terms. This is not a negotiation. It is an offer. You have 1 hour to accept it. Harrison Cole snatched the folder and opened it. His eyes widened as he read. This is insane, he spluttered. This is half, you're asking for half of his liquid net worth, and the Hamptons estate, and the art collection. This is highway robbery. No, Genevieve said coolly. Highway robbery is what your client has been committing against his investors for the past 2 years. This is a divorce settlement. My client is entitled to a life commensurate with the one she enjoyed during the marriage. We've calculated that this is the amount required to fund that lifestyle in perpetuity without her having to steal from anyone. Damien looked at Serafina, a desperate, pleading look in his eyes. It was the look of a trapped animal. Sarah, please, you would ruin me. You ruined us, Damien, she replied, her voice devoid of pity. You did this. Every choice, every lie, every theft. This is the consequence. You thought I was a fool you could discard. You threatened me with being a nobody. Now, you will give me what I am owed, and you will do it silently and quickly. Or this little black drive goes to the New York Times and then to the authorities. By tomorrow, your name won't be on the society pages. It will be on an indictment. The choice was simple: financial ruin or total annihilation. Damien stared at her for a long moment, the hatred in his eyes warring with his survival instinct. Finally, he sagged, a broken man. He gave a jerky, defeated nod to his lawyer. Do it. Just make it go away. As Damien and his lawyer huddled together, frantically making calls, Serafina felt a profound sense of release. It wasn't about the money. It was about justice. It was about proving to him and to herself that she was not nothing. She was the one who held all of the cards. What of Katerina? The fallout for her was swift and brutal. As part of the settlement, Damien was forced to dissolve Petrov Holdings LLC and reclaim all its assets, including the condo and the car. The flow of money stopped overnight. One evening, Serafina saw a gossip item online. Katerina Petrov had been seen moving out of her 15 Central Park West condo, her designer clothes stuffed into cardboard boxes. The Canary diamond was gone, likely sold back to pay for lawyers. Her fire had been extinguished, her 15 minutes of fame ending in a puff of smoke. She was just another casualty in Damien's self-made war, a pawn he had sacrificed without a second thought. Serafina felt not triumph, but a sliver of pity for the girl's foolish ambition. She had made a deal with the devil, and the devil always collected. The war was over. Serafina had won. 6 months later, the name Sterling was no longer synonymous with power couples and society galas. It was a name whispered in conjunction with hostile takeovers and SEC investigations. While Serafina's flash drive never went public, the massive sudden liquidation of Damien's personal assets to fund the divorce settlement sent shockwaves through the financial community. It was a bloodletting that couldn't be hidden. Rumors began to circulate. Competitors sensing weakness began to circle. The man who had once stood at the top of the mountain was now fighting to avoid an avalanche. His empire, built on a foundation of lies, was beginning to crumble under the weight of his own hubris. Serafina, however, was breathing free for the first time in years. She had sold the Fifth Avenue penthouse. The sale made headlines, but she felt nothing but relief as the doors closed on that chapter of her life. The proceeds, along with the vast settlement, were not something she hoarded. She now lived in a beautiful, light-filled brownstone in the West Village. It was elegant and luxurious by any normal standard, but it was a home, not a showroom. It was filled with books she actually read, art she truly loved, and the sound of her own quiet contentment. She established the Serafina Foundation, a charitable organization dedicated to providing legal aid and financial support for women who were trapped in abusive or controlling relationships, particularly those involving financial manipulation. She used her money and her story, anonymously of course, to empower others who had been made to feel like nobodies. One crisp autumn afternoon, she was sitting in the sunny garden behind her brownstone with Olivia. The scent of chrysanthemums filled the air. "I saw an article this morning," Olivia said, sipping her tea. "Sterling Industries is being forced to sell off 2 of its major divisions. The board is unhappy." Serafina looked at the turning leaves on her Japanese maple tree. "I feel nothing about it. It's like reading about a different country." "That's because it is," Olivia said, smiling. "You've emigrated. You have your own life now, your own name." Serafina smiled back, a genuine, unburdened smile. "You know, for years, I thought my role was to be the perfect reflection of his success. The gracious wife, the perfect hostess. I thought that was my value. And now I know my value has nothing to do with a man's name or a diamond ring," she said, her voice filled with a quiet, unshakable confidence. "My value is in my own strength, my own resolve." He thought by taking everything away, he would leave me with nothing. But he was wrong. He left me with myself, and that turned out to be more than enough. She had faced the ultimate betrayal and emerged not broken but forged anew in the fire. The canary diamond, that garish symbol of her husband's deceit, had ironically illuminated the truth. It had shown her the gilded bars of her cage, and in doing so had given her the strength to break free. Her new life wasn't about wealth or revenge. It was about authenticity, purpose, and the profound peace that comes from reclaiming one's own soul. She was no longer Mrs. Damien Sterling. She was Serafina. And that was all she needed to be. The story of Seraphina Sterling is a powerful reminder that the most glittering lives can hide the darkest secrets. It's a tale of betrayal on a scale most of us can barely imagine, but at its heart, it's about a universal theme, the fight for one's own identity and worth against overwhelming power and deceit. Seraphina's journey from a humiliated wife to a formidable force who dismantled an empire is a testament to the strength that lies within us when we are pushed to the absolute limit. She didn't just get a divorce, she got justice. She didn't just take his money, she took back her life. If this story of high-stakes drama and ultimate empowerment resonated with you, please hit that like button to let us know. Share this video with someone who loves a story of true life justice. And most importantly, click subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next dive into the dramatic lives of the rich and powerful. What story should we tell next? Let us know in the comments below.